She tore the young black waitress's dress in front of everyone, just because she thought a servant didn't deserve to look beautiful. But what she didn't know, that same woman she humiliated was about to change her entire life and expose the world she lived in. The grand ballroom sparkled with gold and laughter that night. It was a fundraiser for equality, ironically filled with people who only pretended to care. Amara, the only black waitress on the floor, moved quietly through the crowd, balancing trays and forced smiles. Her hands shook slightly, not from fear but from exhaustion. She'd been working since morning. Then it happened. A glass of wine tipped, spilling a drop on the shoulder of Clara, one of the wealthiest guests there. The music stopped for her scream alone. "Are you blind?" Clara snapped. "Look what you've done!" Amara froze. "I'm so sorry, ma'am." Clara's voice grew louder. "Sorry? You people always say that. You come into our places, serve our tables, and think wearing a nice dress makes you one of us." Every head turned. Amara tried to explain, but Clara reached forward and in one swift motion ripped her dress apart. The room gasped. Amara clutched the torn fabric to her chest, her lips trembling. Nobody moved. Nobody defended her. And when Clara leaned in and whispered, "That's what happens when you forget your place," a man's deep voice came from behind her, calm but sharp enough to slice the silence. "Funny," he said, "because she's the only one in this room who truly belongs here." He stood up for the black waitress everyone ignored, and when he revealed who he really was, the entire room went silent. But what happened next wasn't just about revenge. It was about showing the world that respect has no color, and silence can be louder than hate. Every eye in the room turned toward the man's voice. He was tall, calm, dressed in a black tuxedo, a quiet authority that needed no introduction. Clara froze mid-breath, the arrogance draining from her face. "Excuse me?" she said, forcing a shaky laugh. "And who might you be to interfere?" The man stepped forward, someone who doesn't tolerate cruelty disguised as class. He looked at Amara, still clutching her torn dress, then turned to the crowd. "Did anyone here think this was okay?" No one spoke. The same people who'd laughed a moment ago now stared at their champagne glasses. The music had stopped. The air was heavy with shame. Amara's eyes met his. She looked confused, afraid. But there was something familiar in his expression. Clara rolled her eyes and scoffed. "Don't make this dramatic. She's just a waitress. She should be used to hard lessons." The man's jaw tightened. "She's not just a waitress. Her name is Amara Carter." Clara blinked, realizing the last name sounded familiar. "And she's my wife." Gasps spread through the crowd like wildfire. A few guests whispered his name, Daniel Carter, the billionaire philanthropist funding the entire event. Clara stumbled back, her face pale. I didn't know," Daniel interrupted, his tone sharp but composed. "You didn't need to know. You saw a black woman and decided her worth." He walked past her, taking off his tuxedo jacket and gently wrapping it around Amara's shoulders. "You see, Clara, people like you throw charity galas for equality, but can't even treat another human being with basic respect." The silence was suffocating. Clara opened her mouth, trying to justify herself, but Daniel wasn't done. He looked at the audience, his voice echoing through the hall. "This right here is why racism survives, because too many of you see it and say nothing." A few people lowered their heads. One woman quietly clapped, then another. Soon, the room that once mocked was filled with hesitant applause. Not for Clara's party, but for Amara's dignity. Clara couldn't bear it. Her face red with embarrassment, she turned and hurried toward the exit. But Daniel's last words stopped her cold. "Next time you judge someone's worth by their color," he said softly, "remember, the world sees what you do when you think no one's watching." Amara wiped her tears. She didn't need revenge. That moment, that truth was enough. As they walked out together, the guests followed them with guilty eyes, realizing that for once, the richest person in the room wasn't measured by money, but by heart. The woman who once tore a black waitress's dress came back to find her, not to humiliate her again, but to ask for something she never thought she would: forgiveness. But what happened during that conversation proved one thing: guilt can't erase racism. But change can begin the moment you face your reflection honestly. A week had passed since that night, the video from the charity event Clara tearing. Amara's dress had spread like wildfire. Someone had recorded the entire thing, and now millions had seen it online. Comments poured in. People demanded justice. Clara's brand deals vanished. Her friends stopped answering calls, and her reputation, once spotless, crumbled overnight. For the first time in her life, Clara felt what it meant to be unseen, the same way she had once made others feel. Meanwhile, Amara stayed silent. She didn't speak to reporters. She didn't post statements. She returned to her quiet life, choosing dignity over drama. But one rainy morning, there was a knock at her door. When she opened it, Clara stood there drenched, pale and trembling. Amara, she whispered, please, I just want to talk. Daniel wanted to close the door, but Amara stopped him. Her calm eyes met Clara's. Come in. They sat across from each other. The same woman who had torn her dress now couldn't even lift her gaze. I don't expect forgiveness, Clara began, her voice cracking. I just want to say I was wrong. I grew up thinking people like you were beneath me. I thought money made me better. That night, I saw what kind of person I really am. Amara said nothing. She listened. Clara continued, tears running down her face. You stood there humiliated, and I felt powerful. But when I saw your husband defend you, I realized power isn't about how loud you are. It's about how much truth you can stand to hear. The room was silent except for the rain tapping the window. Finally, Amara spoke. Her voice was soft but firm. You didn't just tear a dress, Clara. You tore through every part of what it means to be human: respect, empathy, kindness. You can't fix that with words. Clara nodded slowly, breaking down completely. I know, but I want to learn. I want to be better. Amara looked at her not with anger, but pity. Then start by listening to the people you never cared to hear before. You don't need to fix me. Fix yourself. Clara wiped her eyes, stood up, and whispered, Thank you for even letting me in. As she left, Daniel turned to Amara. You think she meant it? Amara looked out at the rain and said, Maybe not yet, but every storm starts with one drop. The screen fades, her torn dress still hanging on a chair nearby, not as a wound, but as a reminder. Months after tearing a black waitress's dress, the same woman walked onto a stage, and her first words left the world in tears. But what she said that night wasn't for sympathy. It was for truth. Because sometimes redemption isn't about saying, I'm sorry. It's about showing the world you've changed. 6 months had passed. The memory of that night still echoed in Clara's mind, every whisper, every flash of the cameras, every look of disgust that followed her afterward. But what hurt most wasn't losing her friends or her reputation, it was realizing how blind she had been. For years, she'd lived in privilege, unaware of the silent walls she'd built between herself and the people she called lesser. Then one day she received a letter. It was from Amara. Just a single line. If you've learned, then teach. Those words stayed with Clara. Weeks later, she reached out to a local foundation that supported young black women entering the workforce. She asked to volunteer not as a sponsor, but as a worker, sweeping floors, setting up tables, serving meals. At first, no one believed her. Some even mocked her. But she didn't respond. She just kept showing up. Then came the night of the annual Equality Gala, the same event where everything had begun. Except this time, Clara wasn't attending as a guest. She was invited to speak. The lights dimmed, and she walked up to the microphone. The same ballroom, the same chandeliers, but a completely different woman. She looked around and began, her voice trembling. 6 months ago, I tore a woman's dress because I thought her skin made her beneath me. I told myself it was a mistake, but it wasn't. It was who I was, until that night showed me the truth. The room was silent. Cameras rolled. Amara and Daniel watched from the front row, emotion in their eyes. Clara continued, You don't wake up racist. You're taught. You're surrounded by it until it feels normal. But today, I stand here because one woman refused to answer hate with hate. She showed me what grace looks like. Tears streamed down her face. I can't undo what I did to her, but I can make sure no one else does the same again. She paused, then looked directly at Amara. You didn't just forgive me. You freed me from the ignorance I lived in. And I owe my second chance to the person I least deserved it from. The audience rose in silence, then applause. Not the loud, hollow kind, but the kind that comes from hearts breaking open. As Clara stepped off the stage, Amara met her halfway. For a moment, neither spoke. Amara just smiled softly and whispered, You learned. Clara nodded, tears in her eyes. Because you made me. Hate can break you, but forgiveness, it rebuilds the world.